I had one job, the door that folded me. A story by User Corner Cornea. Part 2. It wasn't long after the first time that I met Roger when I got another request from him to house sit. After what happened last time, I didn't think that I'd ever accept another gig from him. But a friend had figured out that with tips, I had essentially made $100 per hour. And many people were quick to mention that it's not as if I died or anything. Really, does no one care about my well-being? Hey, I'm really glad you came. Roger shook my hand as I arrived. We've been a little stretched out and could use the help. It was the same house. Again, you're free to anything. But remember, don't open any doors, I assured him. Roger smiled an award-winning grin. You got it. He looked at his watch. It was still the most interesting timepiece I had ever seen. I've got another engagement, he told me. Could you get the door? He hollered as it closed behind him. I went up and locked it before sitting down on the couch. Experience told me to not turn on the TV. It also reminded me to pay no mind to the door when it was knocked. Which happened before my but could properly warm the seat. Hey, Roger's voice came through the door. I forgot the keys on the counter. Could you let me in? I didn't make a peep. I didn't even turn my head towards the kitchen to confirm or deny. He knocked again. Open the door, would ya? I'm running late for my next engagement. The rapping came a little rougher this time. What's with you? Come on. What part of running late don't you understand? You know how traffic is around this time. You live around here. I looked up at the clock, it was rush hour. Would you open the door? Hey, you did this last time too, and I had to drive all the way back to the office to get the keys. He knocked harder on the door. Open up. But I did not budge. I didn't even look. Eventually, the knocking ceased and I breathed a sigh of relief. I could feel sweat running down my face. But when I reached to dry them, I realized that they were actually coming from my eyes. I've never been particularly good with conflict. For instance, I went to brunch on Sunday with my dad and ordered the salmon with steamed broccoli. The waiter brought me the chicken fillet and grilled zucchinis. I ate the pan-seared thigh quietly. Thinking about food, my stomach growled as it was almost lunch. I glanced at the door. It was quiet as a mouse. So I got up and went to the kitchen and pulled open the freezer drawer. To my horror, the burritos were missing. They were actually quite decent last time, even the skin, so I was bummed to say the least. I reached for the double handles of the French doored fridge, but froze before I pulled them. It was right there in the name, wasn't it? French doors. I didn't need an etymology degree to know what that meant. Although, I did think about it for a second as my stomach gurgled. But in the end, fear won out. And I retreated to the living room and sat down on the couch. Hungry. Nearly an hour passes before a scratching noise woke me up from my daydreams. I had been planning on how to spend the money. Things that I would buy. Stuff that I'd eat. It was already practically gone even before I got it. The scraping noise sounded as if it was coming from the door. I looked to my left, expecting a knock to follow. But it didn't happen. Yet I could still hear the noise. Against my better judgment, I got up slowly from the couch, going closer to the landing room until I stood beneath the chandelier. Hello, I called out. Don't ask me why I did that. It's not as if I actually wanted an answer. Who's there? Another stupid question. I waited for the door to move, the handle to jiggle. Anything really. But it was dead as a doorknob. Still, I heard the noise clear as a sunny day. I put a hand on the front door. But it didn't budge. Instead, it sounded as if the noise was coming from upstairs. The scratching came again, overcoming the stillness of the house. I reluctantly turned my head upward and followed each step with my eyes. Besides the house tour, I had never ventured up there. Not alone, at least. The scratch came again. I should have sat back down, turned my shoulder away even after I figured that it was none of my business. But then I heard a meow. Now I've house sat before, as I've mentioned. Mostly to feed someone's dog or exotic fish. But everyone once in a while it would be to accompany a cat, even though I found them to be largely self-sufficient creatures. With the only problems I've ever faced with cats being them trapped in a room. Which, without their litter box, it would only mean one thing. Shit, I swallowed as it meowed again. I had read once that cats mimic the cries of human babies in order to appeal to our better instincts. It worked. I climbed the stairs and whistled softly, "Here kitty kitty. Here kitty kitty." All of the doors upstairs were closed. except for the bathroom, which was slightly ajar. "Come on, cat," I hissed. "Where are you?" Meow. The door to my left vibrated as something pushed it from the other side. Meow. I could see it pacing back and forth from the door gap, pacing restlessly, waiting to be let out. Meow. It growled as I got closer, almost as if demanding to be let out. But as I approached, a foul stench emanated through the door. It was thick and sickly, reminding me of cooked mushrooms after they had already passed. "Shit," I repeated. "They're not going to be happy if there is cat crap all over the carpet." Meow, it whined, this time softer. But a thought came to my head. A bedroom door was in fact a door, even if it was on the inside. The thing started to growl as I backed away. Louder now. Deeper. As if it could sense my reluctance. As if it knew that I would keep it trapped inside, maybe forever. The footsteps beneath the door grew heavier. I could see the shadow of growing in size as it stretched beyond the door's threshold. I couldn't get down the stairs quickly enough. Jumping on the couch. Waiting for the growling to dissipate. Waiting for the silence. The minutes ticked by and they felt excruciating. Like I was holding my breath. Struggling to breathe. Each second ticking. In my ear, which seemed maddening, the room circling, spinning, falling down all around me until I nearly went crazy. It wasn't just quiet. It was complete silence. I couldn't hear any cars outside or dogs barking. No birds or wind. I could only hear my own heart beating. If I thought about it too much, I had to remember how not to die. So when a knock finally came at the door and I jumped in my seat, I was almost relieved that I was not alone. "You've got to be shitting me." Through the peephole I saw a life-sized, larger-than-life, minotaur standing outside. It was holding the severed head of a goat. "That's a hard pass," I almost laughed. "You're losing your touch." The minotaur spread open its arms. Almost as if it were accepting a hug. Unmoving. This was in broad daylight, which should have made the entire thing hilarious. Except as I continued staring at it, trying to find a smile on my face, I began to realize that it wasn't trying to trick me to open the door for once. Instead, it was standing before me, almost as if it were posing, as if to show me that this was their true form. The hilarity of it all disappeared as I stared closer at the goat head, and looked into the black of its eyes, thinking I saw within them the fear of its last moments. But it was only my reflection. I backed away and sat on the couch, wondering if the creature was still standing outside the door. I turned on the TV, because anything was better than this impending silence. Some time passes and the screen is playing, but I'm not paying attention. I could feel something in my gut beginning to disappear, as if a blanket had been lifted from the house. And suddenly I felt lighter. I would have breathed a sigh of relief, but a shimmer nearby caught my eye. I glanced around for the specks of blue, following it across the backyard, through the cracks in the adjoining fence. Images of the pool bouncing off the sun, and a red bikini walking like a still image filled the gaps. She was mesmerizing. Her hair was a thick brown and her steps were light and graceful. I had been so drawn to her that when my nose touched the glass, I didn't even feel the cold. She jumped in. I got on my tippy toes to watch her. I waited. Waited to see her emerge. Except she didn't. Splashes of water came up the middle. They felt like screams. Inaudible wails that no one could hear. Not even her family. I banged on the window. "Hey, hey!" I banged on it with both fists. "Somebody help her. Somebody." But there was no one but me. My fingers tried finding the latch on the window. But as they moved past the blinds, my fingertips like blindworms searched for an opening. Before finally realizing that this wasn't a window. Not really. None of them were. They were only single panels of glass staring from the outside in. I ran to the sliding door in the backyard. But I hesitated. My fingers were on the handle, and I could see her hand reaching out of the water. She was waving it frantically, begging for help. But this was a door. A sliding door. I let out a deep breath, and then inhaled again. When I looked up, the hand was still there, waving frantically. This time I held my breath and counted. Nearly a minute went by before I exhaled. A total of 5 minutes must have passed. And still, the hand was waving. And waving. But I would not be waiting. I got back on the couch and ignored everything, all except the hunger. I tried to quell my stomach by flipping through the TV, jumping from platform to platform, wishing that there was some sort of app that could bring all of these streamers together so that I could spend every following second consuming, instead of thinking about the drowning woman. I finally settled on something and began to watch it, just to stop the thoughts inside of my head. But I couldn't ignore the sound that came from beneath me, under the couch. I'm hungry. It was so soft I almost mistook it for something from the TV. I stood up and backed away. You said you'd feed me if I was hungry. I pushed the couch away and found a trapdoor where I had been sitting this entire time. There was a hole in one of the planks. I looked into it and saw an eyeball staring back at me. The figure backed up and revealed the outlines of a kid. They were pale as a ghost, with long black hair that was unkempt and unruly. You're not him. Who? I asked quickly. Is it Roger? I don't know their name. Who are you? I asked. Christian. Christian, are you okay? No. I told you. I'm hungry. Fuck, I whispered. It's the house. It's just the house again. I shook my head. No way. I'm not going to listen to you. Can you feed me? Christian reached a tiny finger through the hole. And for the first time since I started house sitting here, I had been touched. This was real. It felt real. I scrambled to the floor and fiddled with the lock. Christian, I'm going to get you out of here. I promise. No, don't. What? If he finds out, we'll get in trouble. I looked around, half expecting Roger to appear out of nowhere, half wondering if there was a murdering deranged homeowner that was going to sever my head from my beating heart. Don't open any of the doors, Christian warned. What happens if I open a door? You'll never leave. Christian disappeared from view. I hit the lock. Fuck this shit. I'm sick and tired of always being afraid. I ran to the kitchen and rummaged through the drawers. This house had enough of me. I found a hammer and clutched it in one hand, calling the police with the other as I went back to the living determined to bust this lock. Hello, 911. What is your emergency? I'm a house sitter, and I found a kid trapped inside. I think the guy I've been working for, or the people he's working for. Fuck. I don't know. I don't know anything, I realized. All I know is that there's a boy here. A kid. His name's Christian and they've been keeping him under the fucking couch. Please. You've got to help us. I don't know when someone's coming back. I've tracked your location through the GPS signal. 2 units will be arriving there shortly. Please stand by. I didn't have time to wait. Afraid that I would be caught in the act, I tossed my phone on the couch and grabbed the hammer and started wailing on the lock repeatedly. It was like striking an anvil. When the joint finally gave, I uncurled the steel grip from the latch and pulled open the trapdoor. Down below, I could see a tiny figure, shivering. He was only wearing a white cloth around his waist, and he was stick thin. The basement was completely empty except for a twin mattress on the floor, and an orange bucket in the corner. I was afraid to go down there, even now, so I reached my hand out for him. Come on, Christian, I'm here to help you. He looked reluctant at first, but eventually started climbing up the steps. When he was close enough, I grabbed him by the forearm and yanked him out of that hole, trying to cover him with my arms as he was absolutely freezing to the touch. A familiar voice from behind startles me. He sounded disappointed. I told you not to open any of the doors. I whirled around and shielded Christian behind me. Is that the man? I could feel the boy shaking. No. I've never seen that man before. Roger walked toward us and I flinched when he extended his hand. Here, buddy. Let's get you warmed up. He took Christian's hand and led him to the couch, acting all calm and shit as if I hadn't just discovered a literal kid trapped under the house. A house that he seemed to be in charge of. You're so fucked, I told him, shaking. I'm going to fully cooperate with the police when they get here. I don't care what happens to me. I don't care if they think I'm an accomplice. I just wanted you to know that. Roger didn't pay me much mind. Instead, he smiled at the kid and took off his jacket, covering the boy. Hold on tight, all right? For just a little longer. I'll get you something to eat soon. Roger turned towards me. I backed away. Don't you come near me. He put his hands in his pockets and said, I told you not to open any doors. To hell with that. Roger shook his head. We had so much hope for you. You showed so much promise. We? there's more of you in on this. Do you know what this house is? He didn't wait for me to lie. It's a conduit of sorts. A Schrodinger's house, if you will. Nothing truly exists in this reality until one of the doors are opened. Not really. There are many places like this on Earth, and we've watched over them for a really long time. We do this in order to preserve our timeline. Here, walk with me. He brushed past me and left through the front door. I looked at Christian, but the kid was fast asleep. Come on, Roger told me. The kid will still be here. Unfortunately. What are you talking about? I asked. A conduit? He leads me down the driveway. That's right. Nothing happens unless a door is opened. And the consequences could be big. Or small. The pizza guy the other day? If you had opened it, he likely would have gotten a tip. But what he did with that money later is beyond your or even our control. Just like the kid who lost the ball. They could have came in and took a look for themselves. But they would have quickly realized that it was missing for themselves. And who knows what their father would have done. We crossed the street. Why didn't you tell me any of this? Because once you know how it works, you can't really watch the house anymore. Not really. It's why I've had to use people like you. There were others? Roger didn't even smile. Okay, fine, say I believe you. Then why do they start getting angry? Well, some of them. Not the kids, I guess. Wouldn't you start getting angry if you suddenly realized that you weren't going to exist? Unless, of course, you were in a similar situation to Christian's. We had arrived at the house across the street. Roger knocked on the door. A woman answered it, and I immediately recognized her. Even though she wasn't smiling this time. Nor was there blood dripping down the side of her face. Hello? How can I help you too? Hi, we were wondering if you'd be interested in a termite inspection. Her face went from cheery to stoic in an instant. Oh no. I'm sorry. The homeowner isn't here right now. Maybe you could leave a card or something, and I could give it to them. Roger cracked an award-winning smile. No, I don't think that'll be necessary as we're only here for a short while. Thank you for your time. And then turned on his heels and walked away. The woman looked at me one last time before slamming the door shut. I caught up to Roger, but she was fine. Exactly. But if you had opened the door the other day, her kids would have been killed by her husband. Likely her too. Even if you had helped. And you too, if you had opened that door. He's a large guy after all. We climbed the driveway and Roger stopped short at the door. I could hear the sirens going off in the distance. Christian was sitting upright on the couch, rubbing his eyes. I tried my best not to shake as I entered alone. He looked up at me, and I could do nothing but weep and say, I am so sorry.
Thank you for listening to the second part of that story. To support this channel, please do not forget to like and share this video, subscribe to this channel, and click the notification bell to receive updates from us. And before we forget, also, please share this channel, The Double Dutchman. Until our next video, cheers and thanks.